Hey hodlers, how's it going? Over the weekend, there was an amazing Bitcoin conference in Miami. A lot of good things were said in the Bitcoin conference. Some people had some criticism to say about the Bitcoin conference, and it is what it is. But we're going to be talking about the important highlights over the Bitcoin conference, exactly which interviews and panels that I liked the most, and one of the most fantastic panels that I've probably ever seen in cryptocurrency. But, obviously he's a little bit more Bitcoin focused, but it does show you the power of cryptocurrency, even if you take away the Bitcoin maximalism that's tied within it. Now, I just want to say I have nothing against Bitcoin. I just think that there's plenty of room in the space for multiple other projects and multiple other blockchain technologies. But I do think that Bitcoin is going to be one of the leading digital assets going into the future. If you do like this content, go ahead and give me a like and join the Hodl fam by hitting the subscribe button. All right, let's get into it. So the first panel, and I'm not going to show you really clips. I'll probably splice in clips after I talk about something, just little bits, but obviously go check out the recording. There's a whole 8-hour live stream of the day 2 of the conference. You can go check that out on your own time. And there's also a bonus interview with Michael Saylor. You actually already saw a snippet in the last video yesterday. The big thing that they mentioned here in this panel, that they talked about the monetary concerns, the power concerns, and everything else, all the FUD that's been going around with Bitcoin. Highly recommend this panel. I think they did an excellent job at basically summarizing the need for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in the future, and also, the energy impact. And I think they articulated exactly what the actual concerns are, which they are concerns, but they're concerns that we can work around. It's not the killer of Bitcoin. The next panel that I found fantastic was the panel with Frank Holmes, Jason Les, Fred Thiel, and of course, Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary himself. Now, this panel is all about mining stocks and Bitcoin mining in general. And also, it goes into eco-friendly mining. But I'm not particularly a fan of mining stocks in general. I don't think it's a good way to invest. I think just buying Bitcoin directly is a much better solution. And of course, you can buy an ETF and put it in a tax-free savings vehicle. But with mining stocks specifically, they did mention some things that might be appealing to some people that still want to hold on to their government subsidies. We talked about that in the Elon Musk video over yesterday. Go check that out after this video. But the big thing that they were saying here, and specifically with Canada, we have our provinces. If there was a mining stock that was specifically in a specific province, operating in a certain regulatory framework to be legislatively compliant under a green infrastructure, they could sell these Bitcoins as green generated Bitcoin, which could be beneficial for some companies that are looking for that exact thing. Now, you're probably going to pay a premium for most of these services. And again, I feel like this is way more of a industry investor solution than a private investor solution. I'd say if I were you or me, I would definitely just be buying Bitcoin on the open market. At this point, it is what it is. We can't control all of the energy generation of Bitcoin. And I get that some people have issues with the energy concerns, but unless for whatever reason legally you're required to buy energy efficient Bitcoin, I probably wouldn't do it. And I'd probably just hope that us as a world just works to move to more renewable energy resources later on in life anyway. And that includes things like nuclear. I know that a lot of people don't like it, but even in a couple of panels here, they did talk about nuclear energy being one of the solutions that we do need to look at. And we do know that nuclear is actually a viable option, and it would help bridge the gap between solar and wind for the time being while we're still developing these technologies. So there's obviously things that we can do to better the system entirely. But either way, regardless, if you like mining stock, I thought the overall conversation was excellent. They did come into a lot of other discussion about Bitcoin, so highly recommend you take a look at the panel. And obviously, we had an appearance from good old Mike Novogratz, and he's been a long-term bull for the crypto space, so it was good to hear from him and hear his perspective. And this panel here was not only the most impactful panel for Bitcoin in general, I also feel like it was one of the most impactful speeches for cryptocurrency and the actual reason why we need cryptocurrency today. And this was presented by Jack Mallers, and the title was One Small Step for Bitcoin, One Giant Leap for Mankind. And I do believe in reality, this is what we're talking about. Michael Saylor also said it in a discussion on a panel on his own, and he discussed the need for Bitcoin and why it's required to move away from legislatively controlled money and go onto actual property that you can actually own and have. And it's hard for some people to understand the tangibility of Bitcoin, but it is actually one of the most tangible things that you can own, especially if you have it in a cold wallet. I know it doesn't seem that way considering it's digital, but trust me, it is actually that way. So the piece about inflation, I think, is very important, especially now. You've been hearing me talk about it a lot on this channel. This is why I talk about dollar cost averaging into gold and making sure that you actually have some Bitcoin going into the future. As much as I am a bull on altcoins, I think stacking sats is by far going to be the best thing that you can do for your financial future going down the road. And of course, I still dollar cost average into Bitcoin. Now, I obviously make money with a lot of other cryptocurrencies. There's no way around that. And Bitcoin is not in any way my top holding, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to buy it, especially when it's at prices that it's been at lately. But monetary policy is a big problem right now, especially with the Federal Reserve in the United States, and we know inflation numbers are way out of whack to what they actually should be. Regardless of what the charts are saying, we know there's actual inflation in the system. He discussed this by the inflation and tuition costs, and if you're from Ontario specifically, you know tuition costs in spades. Another big one is the housing market. This one goes near and dear to my heart because I still can't buy a home regardless of my income or anything else, because I'm just priced out of the market completely. So new home buyers are just shafted. And Michael Saylor actually made a good point that eventually with Bitcoin pumping up and diminishing the value of the dollar, it could diminish the value of residential real estate, which in turn helps the buyability for some of these homes. So Bitcoin is poised to actually solve some of these housing problems, but that is based on whether or not the United States dollar goes down compared to Bitcoin. But I think this is a very good way to illustrate that we have been experiencing inflation regardless of what the Federal Reserve is feeding to us. And at this point, central banks are doing nothing for our global economy. In fact, they're hurting us. And we know this now. We're closer to negative interest rates than we've ever been in this world, and we cannot sustain it at this rate. The global debt is up, and the money printing just keeps coming. We know fiat currency isn't going to last. And it's almost like we are on a death march to the eventual end of fiat currencies. And we see this with other countries, Venezuela being one big one that happened recently. Lebanon is one close to my heart. Obviously with the blast in Lebanon and the corruption in the government, that caused the Lebanese dollar to basically plummet, and everyone was rushing to buy USD, buy Euro, and buy Bitcoin. And that's why Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is so important going into the new future. Because in a lot of ways, we're going through a dramatic shift in humanity. Bitcoin and blockchain technology is the actual solution. And eventually, these systems, these monetary policies are going to fall away and be replaced with blockchain and Bitcoin. I firmly believe all of this is going to be fact. Now, I don't think that Bitcoin is going to be the reserve of every country, but I do think that blockchain is going to be what runs most central bank digital currencies. But will Bitcoin actually be legal tender in some countries? So again, the big thing with Bitcoin, why is Bitcoin so much harder than the USD? Well, it's finite. There's a limited supply of Bitcoin. There can never be more Bitcoin minted or made. And this goes down to why monetary policy isn't good. We can operate monetary policy in a way where we're still supporting social assistance programs, but doing this within the confines of a budget and not going into a deficit. The deficit spending is where we have a dramatic amount of issues. And that's really what we need to look at. And I find that right now, the United States putting all this money into infrastructure and a lot of other countries doing the exact same, they're just doing this because they're waiting for the eventual death of fiat. And what's going to happen at that point? I can only speculate what's going to happen. Maybe a debt jubilee, maybe a slew of other things, repaybacks, negative interest rates, whatever it is to onboard the system into blockchain. But I do think that eventual future is coming. But is that future actually closer than we think? El Salvador, he discussed this exactly in the video. I'm going to put a clip here.
He dropped some really heavy stuff on me. Over 70% of the active population in El Salvador doesn't have a bank account. They're not in the financial system. They had a huge problem of financial inclusivity and providing their citizens with basic human freedom. And so they asked me to help write a bill, and that they viewed Bitcoin as a world-class currency, and that we needed to put together a Bitcoin plan to help these people and give them hope and give them a quality of life, and that you can live where you're born in, you don't have to leave, and when you send money home, they're not going to take fucking half of it. And I worked really hard, and I lived there, and I got to know the community, and I made friends that I hope will be at my wedding someday. And so with all that being said, I'd like to invite Now someone I've spent some time with to share a message.
My name is Nayib Bukele, and I'm president of El Salvador. Great ideas are beautiful and have great power. But like most beautiful things, they can also be more fragile than we think. When I was a kid, we thought about the future and we were delighted by its possibilities. We couldn't wait for it to happen and be part of its creation. But now, ask almost anyone what they think about the future and they will say something along the lines of nuclear war, climate catastrophe, hunger, pestilence, the death of life. We didn't take care of the beautiful idea that we create our own future, that we as humanity can do almost anything that we imagine. Our ingenuity, what separates us from other species. In El Salvador, we are trying to rescue this idea and start the design of a country for the future, using the best ingredients that makes us who we are, while using sensibility to find the best examples of ideas from history and around the world. I believe Bitcoin could be one of these ideas. That is why next week, I will send to Congress a bill that will make Bitcoin a legal tender in El Salvador. In the short term, this will generate jobs and help provide financial inclusion to thousands outside the formal economy. And in the medium and long term, we hope that this small decision can help us push humanity at this tiny bit into the right direction. I enjoy politics to leave a legacy for my country, but while doing it, and by working with like-minded people, maybe we can help create a legacy for the world.
Obviously, you got very emotional in this, and it makes sense because you are dramatically changing people's lives. This is what we talk about with Cardano in Africa. They're bringing financial services to a people that haven't had financial services to this degree before. I'm not saying anything about the fact that Africans need loans or Africa is poor. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying when you're able to leverage assets and when you're able to leverage loans, you're able to dramatically expand your businesses, your farms, anything else that you're looking to invest in yourself. And that's one of the best things that you can do is take a loan to invest in yourself directly or your business. And if you can do that at a peer-to-peer rate from micro to macro loans, that could be incredibly beneficial for Africa. We see China encroaching on Africa on a daily basis, constantly pushing in investment money. Why do you think China specifically would be investing in Africa? Why do you think everyone is so focused on Africa right now? Because when you have a massive amount of people that aren't onboarded to the financial system, but they're about to be onboarded to the financial system, more people are joining the internet than ever before in this day and age. That is just going to unlock the biggest amount of social capital we've ever seen in at least 100 years. And I truly believe investments in Africa are going to pay massive dividends in the end. I think we're going to see incredible growth within the continent. But specifically discussing El Salvador, he did discuss that they're actually working to make Bitcoin legal tender in the country of El Salvador, which I think is incredible. It's a perfect first step to move to this decentralized world of decentralized finance and understanding exactly that Bitcoin is legitimately the best store of value for the long term, and it's going to be the hardest asset going forward. Governments are going to have a lot harder time to collapse essentially when they're on the blockchain. The big issues with social assistance programs and the big issues with a lot of governments is corruption from the top, people siphoning money through. How do you do that on a public blockchain? The answer is you don't. That's the problem that cryptocurrency solves. It solves fraud, it solves corruption, it solves a lot of bad monetary policy, and it props up countries that haven't had the ability to be propped up in over 100 years. I highly recommend you actually go check out this full interview. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Also check out Michael Saylor's discussion. He had a lot of good things to say. I really appreciated it. And obviously you got a little snippet in the last video there. If you do like this content, go ahead and give me a like, subscribe to the channel to join the Hodl fam. And of course, happy hodling.